Welcome to Ag on Wheels. Today, we're not standing in the middle of a field because agriculture goes much further than that. We're here with Andrea Hance of the Texas Shrimp Association, and she happens to be the executive director. So today she's going to teach us a little bit about ocean ag?
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit of shrimp, maybe Shrimp 101.
Shrimp 101. Can't wait to show you guys. Stay tuned. Andrea, tell us a little bit about the history of shrimping. I know a lot of times when we go into a grocery store and we buy shrimp or we order it at a restaurant, we don't really think about it being part of agriculture. So tell us a little history of the shrimping industry.
Right, so the shrimping industry has been around since around the 1950s, 1960s. I know a lot of the Louisiana shrimpers actually headed south down to South Texas after World War II and started a vivacious shrimping industry. It had grown and it probably was at its peak probably in the late 1980s. Okay. And unfortunately over the years, due to a multitude of reasons, our industry has actually been declining. So back in the 80s, there was approximately 5,000 commercial fishing vessels out in the Gulf of Mexico, and today there's less than 1,000. So again, there's a lot of issues that we have to deal with. That's what my association is involved in. A lot of people don't know this. When they think of shrimp, they think of a cute little fishing vessel that goes out in a beautiful bay, and it kind of has a cute little captain, idyllic captain. It comes in and it loads the shrimp every day, and that's typically just not the case. These fishing vessels go out for 45, 60 days at a time out in the Gulf of Mexico. We want these boats to stay out. Typically 60 days is where we could typically start making a little bit of money.
So Andrea, you said that the boats go out for 45 to 60 days for fuel purposes. How much fuel does a typical vessel like this take?
So on average, to fill a vessel like this up to go out for about a 60-day trip, it costs anywhere, depending on the fuel prices, obviously it costs anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000.
$15,000 to $30,000 per trip?
Per trip.
Well,
yeah. So you're sending a vessel out with that much of fuel, which by the way is non-insurable. For minimum insurance to cover this boat right here is somewhere around $20,000, $25,000 that we have to pay a year.
Wow.
So then you're dealing with an industry that's the second most dangerous industry in the United States. So we have to mitigate all of the risks associated with this industry, and sometimes we just send the boat out and cross our fingers and just pray.
Just pray. That's all you can do sometimes.
Pray.
Okay, this thing that I'm about to jump into is for what?
So this tank right here is actually where we keep the brine solution. So when these nets, when they pull the nets in, they drop the shrimp on the back deck. They're separated out and put into sacks, and then they're dipped in a brine solution, and immediately they take the shrimp and put it right over here into the freezer. And these freezers typically are kept at about minus 20 degrees. So we have good guys on board, and they're specifically trained to make sure that the shrimp stay nice and fresh.
You know, in today's aspect, when we think agriculture and we think about a farming field, you know, land is slowly dwindling down and it's hard. Agriculture is hard and it's getting harder as the days go by. But the same goes for your association and your industry. What challenges are you facing? Why is this so difficult now?
So yeah, there's several issues that we're having to deal with that compounding, they make it so challenging for this industry to continue. One is the flood of cheap imports, which is so frustrating. So there's close to 2 billion pounds of shrimp that enter this country every year. Less than 1% are even regulated at all or even tested for banned chemicals, antibiotics. Anything you can think of has been injected into that shrimp to obviously make them heavier, to make them bring a better price. And out of the 1% of shrimp that actually get tested by the FDA, close to 25% of that shrimp are actually testing positive for banned chemicals, dangerous chemicals, and America just lets it flow into the country. So the other issue, we have close to 13,500 regulations. We are the 7th most regulated industry in the United States. Okay. We are a few regulations shy of being tied with the airline industry. Here is an American industry that is basically the economic backbone of coastal communities around the United States. And we're being regulated to death, but yet we continue to allow an open door policy for all the nasty, harmful shrimp that's coming into the country. The third issue that we're having problems with runs parallel with like the farming industry. We're just not seeing a younger generation coming into this industry. There's not any new blood coming into this industry. And the reason for that is it's one of the most riskiest industries there is.
Oh, I can imagine.
With all of these regulations, not knowing where your crew is going to come from because we simply cannot find enough people to work on these boats.
So labor, like you're saying, labor on the farm, you know, people have a difficult time finding it. Even we have a difficult time, and I'm from the Rio Grande Valley, close to the border. And so the same thing is going for the shrimp industry. So it's not just a land issue, it's a sea issue too.
Absolutely. But we try and we educate consumers. All we can do right now is, again, provide as much education as possible and just ask the consumers to know and be educated about where their food is coming from.
Amen. All right, so we're standing here by this large propeller. How often do y'all get into mechanical issues while out on sea?
So I would venture to say a boat rarely stays out for the full duration of our planned trip and not have any form of mechanical issues that we have to deal with. Some of the issues can be dealt with out on water, but you understand the Gulf of Mexico is a very rough body of water. So you're talking sometimes there's 12, 15 foot seas. So trying to do any work on these fishing vessels, plus when you're trawling, you know, behind a shrimp boat, there's thousands of sharks. So yeah, you don't want to fall over one of these boats and you don't want to have to dive underneath it to do something. Yeah, you're going to get eaten. About 70% of our income is actually made within probably a 3-month window. So if we have mechanical issues during that time, it pretty much is going to knock us out of any chance of turning a profit at the end of the year. But so we lose a ton of money each day that boat is not in the water fishing.
How can the consumer know when they're in the grocery store or at a restaurant that they are receiving or buying that Texas Gulf shrimp?
They have to, by law, have a label on there, and it has to illustrate the country of origin. So where a consumer needs to be really careful is it needs to read product of or harvested in the Gulf of Mexico, or unfortunately a lot of times it'll say product of Thailand, product of China. But basically the consumer needs to do their own due diligence and actually just take the time and read the label. Now at restaurants, that's a little bit trickier. Now I'm not saying that restaurants are trying to deceive us whatsoever, but the problem is we educate consumers to ask the wait staff at a restaurant where the shrimp are from. Well, 99% of the time that wait staff has no idea. Right. So they just assume, just like the consumer assumes, that it's coming from the Gulf of Mexico, when actuality it's probably not. So, and even along the coast, so 92% of all shrimp consumed in the United States, and that goes alongside the coastal areas as well. People are really amazed that a lot of restaurants right next to the water, you can throw a rock and hit the water, that shrimp is being imported from 5,000 miles away.
We've gone from society that knew the simplicity of their food to now this generation in this society where there's so much misinformation and people just don't really care where their food comes from. Yeah. And I think it's important for us, if we want to survive and we want to educate people on agriculture, we need to tell them exactly how it is.
Exactly.
Andre, thank you so much for taking us out today and showing us just how important, shrimping is to our industry and how agriculture is much more than just crops in a field. We really appreciate you and I wish you the best and God bless.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming down, and anybody else that'd like to come down and get more information about this industry, feel free to stop by.
Careful what you wish for.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Where will I be next? Only God knows. I'm going swimming.